So we're here with one of our coaches, with Jeremy, who's one of our vocal coaches for Slow Coach Arts, and we're going to talk a little bit about singing and the winter because we're kind of heading towards that now. And obviously, in a normal world, we'd be heading towards crazy Panto season. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the two of those and about kind of how is the best way to survive as a singer through coughs and colds and 12 show weeks and all that sort of stuff. If you could give your three best quick tips to someone, so they go, Jeremy, I'm off to start Panto tomorrow. What would be your top three survival tips for this person?
Learn your notes.
It's a good start.
And again, I mean, quite apart from the fact that as a musical director, I'm going, learn your notes.
Learn your notes.
Quite apart from that, what is interesting is as a singer, I sing and play the piano and play wind instruments. So when you're playing an instrument, you can almost always see what you're doing. And therefore you go, okay, my finger is in the wrong place. I'll just shift my finger to that and now the chord is right. As a singer, you're so much reliant on feel as well as sound. And until you've learnt your notes, until you've learned what and it's not even the notes, it's the jumps between them, it's the patterns that you have to sing. When you start to learn the pattern, when you're starting to learn the patterns, you're not always singing with a really good technique because half of your brain is going, I don't know where the next note is. The moment you do, I don't know where the next note is, your technique goes out the window. Singers talk to me about this all the time. It's like, that song is not in my voice. Absolutely. Because you have to create the notes. As a singer, you are the only instrument really that has to create every part of the note. You know, as a brass player, yeah, okay, you have to squeeze your lips a bit more to get a higher note or a bit less to get a lower note. But you've still got the whole brass instrument in front of you and valves and all sorts of things
Yeah.
to do that. As a singer, the entire instrument is inside your body. And when you open your mouth, what comes out is the end product of what you've done, what you've created. So if you're not sure, I found this over and over again in my coaching sessions, when you are not sure what the note is, the singing technique goes out the window. And quite often people are going, I'm having a real problem with that note. And I'm going, no, actually, you're not having a problem with the note. You're having a problem with the jump. The note that you've just come from to, or there's something that happened 3 notes before that note's wrong. And because that note's wrong, your brain is going, I don't know what I just did. And then the big note goes out.
Yeah, then you've lost your money notes.
Yes. So number 1 is learn your notes. And that's absolutely genuine. Because it helps you. It helps you understand what it is that you're doing. Number 2, warm up, please.
Please. For the sake of your musical director and the sanity of everyone on the team, please.
There are so many people that I've come across who say, oh, my warm-up is a cup of tea and a cigarette. Lovely. Congratulations. Well done to you. Now can we get some variation in there? The basic idea of a vocal warm-up is to get blood to your muscles, as in any sport. So because the vocal fold itself has a muscle running through it, and because there are all sorts of muscles around the vocal fold and inside the larynx and outside the larynx, you really want to get the blood going, sort of getting to those muscles. Because you're going to be using your voice as a singer in a more athletic way than you do as a speaker. Because there are 2 main differences between singing and speaking. So I'm digressing all the time, which is great. 2 main differences between singing and speaking, because they both use voice, they both use the vocal folds, they both use airflow, they both use resonating spaces. But with singing, one of the biggest differences is that you extend the sound. You could sort of do this if you were doing declamation in the speaking voice, where you extend vowels slightly, but it's still not quite the same as singing. So the moment you do that, you're making your vocal folds vibrate constantly. In terms of making any pitch at all, if you're going to make a pitch that we can hear as a note, your vocal folds are going to be vibrating together regularly at a particular speed. The moment you start to sing, you're extending the amount of time that you stay at that speed. So your vocal folds are working. The second thing that's the difference between singing and speaking is range. And anybody who performs will know this. It's like, name a role that lives over 5 notes. Because Uh,
Probably Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady, perhaps.
even that, which is hard,
Rex Harrison just talking his way through the whole show.
even that, even that occasionally, and he uses quite a lot of pitch range.
That's true.
Even there, I'm still going with singing and have a different pitch range. And also, as a singer, you're likely to stay higher up in your range than you would speak normally. So if I
Hmm.
go to about the top of my range and I say there most of the time when I'm speaking, obviously this is very different to the way that I normally speak. But I can sing up there and do whole phrases up there, and I may have to, depending on the role. So the biggest thing that you're doing when you're doing a warm up is making sure that you've got blood to the muscles and that you're covering your range. Can I tell you what not to do?
Absolutely. Tell me what not to do.
I think that's more fun. What not to do is to do 2.5 octave scales as the first thing you do.
Okay.
Or, octave and a half arpeggios, or just stretching the range as much as you can the very first thing that you do, because you are not warmed up. If you like, those are tests rather than warm-ups. So there are certain exercises that you can do that will help the blood get to the muscles. It will start the vocal folds stretching. It will start the whole business of singing and sustaining, but we're not going to go to extremes immediately.
Hmm.
Exactly the same as a sportsman going, I'll just start a warm-up with a 10-second sprint. No, you won't, because you'll fall over.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that I would suggest is actually you stay within your speaking voice range and you just do mm-hmm, 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 mm.
Hmm.
Just really gentle sounds, really, and the mm-hmm is great. I'm not doing mm-hmm, which is again, this is range stretching, this is later. So then you move from the M to the very gentle vowels. Mm-hmm, uh-huh. So gentle. I am not doing volume, I'm not doing range. Now, this is where you discover whether you can speak quietly or whether your voice is wrecked from the 3 performances yesterday. If it's wrecked, do a few more. Not performances, warm-ups. So you've got the mm-hmm, uh-huh, and you can hear that I'm absolutely in the middle of my speaking range.
Hmm.
That's the bit that, if you like, you're already using. Then you can start, and again, we're being very gentle about this. You do, mm-hmm, uh-huh, ah, oh, ah, and I'm using very gentle glottals, and I'm starting to extend the range, but I'm nowhere near the top of my range yet. I'm still in that beautiful comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this, a couple of minutes, no more. I mean, and for me, an interval up, if you're doing more than 5 minutes, there's something going on that you need to work on.
Right. Okay.
I don't believe in 20-minute warm-ups because the question then is, what are you warming up?
Hmm.
So in a warm-up, you've got voice, vocal folds, blood, air supply, that.
Yeah.
So you're getting that ready to work. You're getting it ready to extend your pitch, extend your sustain. Then you've got musical patterns. So if I've got a piece that is classically based, there's going to be a lot of classical based scales in my piece. If I'm singing Handel or some form of classical composer, a lot of it, or Mozart, it's going to be ah. It's that type of scale.
Hmm.
If I'm doing something that's more contemporary commercial, it's more pop, it's more musical theatre contemporary, not going to have those scales in it. It doesn't exist.
Hmm.
They genuinely don't exist in most musicals. So my next question is, if you're doing scales but you're singing a contemporary commercial musical, why?
What's that achieving?
What is that achieving? What it's achieving is it's helping you sing classical music. Congratulations. Well done. Beautiful. Wrap it beautifully. Burn it. The thing about the repertoire that you're singing is if you can find some patterns in the repertoire that you're singing. So let's say you had a phrase that goes, ah. Beautiful example of a 2-note drop off. Right, take that pattern and go, ah, 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 that's actually using the sort of material that you're going to be using
Hmm.
during the day. So you're working, this is all about task based. You're working your voice and getting into the patterns that you're going to be using in the show. And honestly, if we're talking pantomime, number three is the cool down. Because the cool down resets your voice back into real life again. Because if you listen to where my speaking voice is, if I start to sustain the speaking voice, it's around about there. I can go a bit lower, but it's around sort of here in that area of pitch. Most songs that I sing don't sit in that pitch range.
Hmm.
They sit more in this pitch range or even higher. So most of the songs that I sing sit above my speaking range, and this is the case for most people. You speak in the lower quarter of your entire range. Most
Right.
people will. People who have excitable people speak on a slightly higher pitch. Um, but most people will speak in the lower quarter of their range, which means when you come to singing, you're mostly outside your speaking range.
Hmm.
Unless you are singing something like um, Desiree's mother in
Oh, Madame Armfelt.
Madame Armfelt, thank you, in
Liaisons in A Little Night Music.
Night Music, which good. Well done, you passed the test. Uh,
I've done it twice.
such a great musical. And the entire role sits from G4 downwards, G above middle C downwards. And so that really does sit mostly in an actress's speaking voice.
Hmm.
Most of the time you're above. So if you've done an entire show, you've been belting, you've been screaming, you've been doing whatever you've been doing, and you come to the end of the show, your vocal folds have done a lot of stretching. So in order to unstretch them and make sure that they're comfortable again back in your speaking range, one of the things that you can do is either, and these both do the same thing, it's either straight into creak or the sigh creak. Creak is really good for you if it's done properly because it releases tensions, it unstretches the vocal folds, and it gets you back to neutral. I do the straight into creak exercise, and my wife Gillian does the pitch glide downwards into creak. So I'll do both of them because they suit different people. If you do, mine is I'm holding a note and I back off the airflow until I drop into creak. It's going to sound like this. And the airflow under creak is so low. It's so gentle. It's very slow airflow. Once you can get back into creak, that means that you've lost some of that stretch and your vocal folds have gone, oh, thank goodness I can relax. So my version is hold the note, back off the airflow, but keep holding the note. If you do that successfully, the note will probably drop, certainly in men's voice, it'll drop an octave.
Oh, okay.
There is also a very comfortable range that most people can do creak in, and it's going to be, it's not the very lowest note you can sing. If you try and creak on your very lowest note, it won't work. Come up a couple of notes from your lowest note and start there. And there's normally 4 or 5 notes around the lower end of your range that you can creak comfortably from. And anybody who uses creak in their voice knows this anyway.
Hmm.
I mean, lots of people use creak in their speaking voice nowadays.
Yeah.
I drop into it occasionally when I can't be bothered. So, Gillian's version is slightly different, where you sigh downwards and then drop into creak. So it goes, and in general, this is massive generalization, we found that the women prefer the sigh creak and the men prefer the breath creak.
Interesting.
We've
Okay. And there's no real reason for that.
Not particularly, no. But yeah, it gets you back into talking to, taking your applause from the general public, signing your autographs, all of that stuff. Yeah, the cool down for me is the thing that will make the biggest difference.
That's amazing, and I think it's a really concise little toolkit. I mean, obviously we've gone into quite well, you've gone into quite some detail. I've just sat here and nodded, but it's a really useful little toolkit for anyone that's kind of planning any kind of long run, because it is very much like Panto is, as much as people do look down on it, it is like it's a training
Oh,
ground more than
oh,
anything else for any performer. If you can sustain those shows, 12, 13, 14 shows a week through winter, through living in digs somewhere you've probably never been before, if you can do that and come out the other side having not done any damage, it's a great thing, and something that actually it's really useful to talk to someone who's had so much expertise from various different sides of it. You've been in the pit playing, and you've been coaching people through it, so it's all so useful. And I think we're just gonna have to do this again with all the other facets of life as a performer. We'll just go through and we'll cover them all over the next year, Jeremy. Great. Well, I think we'll wrap it up and leave it there. But for everyone that's watching, if you'd like your own session with Jeremy, you can cover, as we said earlier, belting, but singing in general.
yes.
Links to his slow coach stuff is all down below. And watch out, because we'll probably do this again. Because if nothing else, I've learned a lot. So thanks very much, Jeremy.
Great. Thanks, Will.